Hey, welcome to another week with Bob and Chris. This week was a crazy week. I know, Chris, you were down in Orlando,
Yep.
and
I got in very late last night.
had you
Very
very.
late.
Hopefully, you didn't have one of my travel adventures because I'm not sure how many chapters I've got in the book now for travel adventures with Bob.
I saw somebody that I think was having a mental breakdown
Oh
as we
no!
were pushing away from the jetway. We had to stop the plane, reset it, and they escorted the person off the plane after bringing the jetway back down. So that's why I was so late getting home.
Oh no!
It was a interesting experience. Nobody got hurt. The person, I think, obviously the person, they were trying to get medical attention, I think, for, but yeah, that's the dangers of flying out late too, out of Florida back to Michigan. So
Yeah, I had one flight from Florida where we actually had to do an emergency landing in Orlando because they thought they had a fire indicator on one of the engines.
that's worse than my story. That's much that's a lot scarier than my story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was flying up the coast to go to New Jersey, and all of a sudden they made a left hand turn. And like my wife's like, "Where are we going?" And they put the plane on this remote runway, and five fire trucks converged on the plane, and they just looked at it with us sitting on it. We didn't evacuate the plane, but it was a tense moment.
yeah, this is one of the times when you're flying like nah, I don't want to do this anymore. Which we can parlay this in cybersecurity if you have an incident, and we're in cybersecurity awareness month. Once you go through something like that, you don't want to go through it again. It's like a car accident, right? You get in a car accident, you never want to go through it again. Um,
Yeah, actually, that brings up a really good point. A lot of people think, if I get hacked, I just go restore all the backups or put things back and we just move on. But that's not the case anymore.
No, and I think that's the one thing that we're missing in Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We talk about the basics, and that's really cool because the basics are important. MFA, train your users, make sure that people aren't clicking on phishing emails, things like that. But once you get past the basics and you get into that, it's a different world. With the way that data is extracted now, you probably need to get an incident response firm involved, and those costs can add up very quickly. So,
Um, Chris, I think we need to go back a little bit and really talk about what an incident response firm is doing,
yep.
because a lot of people are like, well, I think, well, my email got compromised. I changed the password. We turned on MFA. We're all set. We're all set to go now, right?
So, yeah, yeah. Until you didn't clean up how they actually got access to your data, and maybe they continue to have access to your data and you don't know it. That's where. So, yeah, to your point, this is when something bad happens in your company. From a cyber perspective, you can talk to most IT companies can give you some basic guidance to it, like clean up certain things or look at certain things and we kind of make that decision. But for like Bob and I, like the longer we go and stuff like that, and the more you talk to like insurance companies, you start talking to like even government agencies, we need to refrain sometimes from actually doing an action because it could be compromising you as a customer or your ability to recover. And the point being is, if you have cyber insurance and we do something and it doesn't align with the cyber insurance, we could it could actually affect your ability to get a payment from them. So
Yeah.
if
So, like Chris was saying, we focus on seeing if something's going on, containing it and suspending it, but we can't necessarily go start restoring everything to the way it was because now we're losing evidence. And these guys, the insurance companies want specific forensic things done, and your insurance policy will probably pay for the forensics, but you got to go through the process. And a couple months ago, we had one. It was a $10,000 business email compromise. I've talked about it in the past, but that was $35,000 worth of forensics for them to look at just the Office 365 environment.
Yeah, so I think the easiest analogy for this is to compare it to a crime scene unit, right? So something bad happens. Um, the crime scene unit has to come up. They have to collect information. They have to collect DNA. They have to collect fingerprints. Maybe they're looking for like, if it's a gunshot situation, they're looking for like shell casings and things like that. They're trying to recreate and paint the picture of what actually happened, so that they can actually go to court and find the perpetrator, go to court and get that person convicted. Incident response is exactly the same way. We can provide a lot of the data, but there's very specific processes that have to be followed to make sure that the evidence would stand up in court, or the evidence would stand up, in a situation like for cyber insurance. That has to be collected in a very specific way, and it needs to be done in a very specific manner and presented as such. So we focus on being like your defense team to a point, but sometimes you got to call on an expert that's even above us, that's specific to that thing. And incident response is really there. If you've had money stolen from your company, you absolutely need to hire an incident response firm.
Absolutely.
If your insurance company provides it, that's great. If not, we have resources that both Bob and I have access to that we can offer incident response through, but they're specifically done through a third party.
And like Chris said, these are highly specialized resources, and just to get these guys engaged, we're looking at a $10,000 to $15,000 retainer, and then it's going to go north from there quickly.
Yep. And for business email compromise, that's that. If you go into ransomware, they need to hang out in the environment to keep collecting data to make sure that the people are gone. And that engagement's going to be 30, 60, or 90 days. So if you get ransomware in your business, you can pretty much expect with an incident response firm, they're going to be in your network for 30 to 90 days, trying to make sure that the threat's been eradicated and that the vector they use to get into your network to compromise you in the first place is closed.
And well, you bring up a good point, because if you are able to determine that the threat actors are in there, and you open the incident and you bring in the incident response team, that's one thing. But I've heard of pieces where the FBI or Secret Service came knocking on the door of the business that said, you're currently compromised. Those next steps are not pretty.
Sounds like you need incident response for Sadie.
Yeah, Sadie's not happy because the guys just showed up to cut the grass.
Oh, yeah. So that's a great point. Like if the government comes knocking, that's because you're on a lot of radars, and it may not be you being anything bad. It's just that you're showing up in dark web forums. You're showing up in certain other situations, and that's not a way to find out your data was leaked either.
And I was actually, I was at an event. I guess it was right before COVID, where the speaker was talking about how a data breach affected his company, and it literally was the FBI came knocking on his door that said, your data is accessible on the dark web right now. And just the emotional drain on him, and the financial drain on ultimate financial drain on the company was. I was really shocked that this guy was taking the time to share, but really happy to hear the story.
Well, I kind of wish people would stop being embarrassed to share. Just because it is so powerful. It is so powerful, especially if you see a colleague or, even a competitor that's suffered through this, because we can all be a victim. And when victims share their experience, it helps everybody be better together. And I think that's a missing part right now, like, especially with private companies, because they don't want to report it. They feel embarrassed. They don't want to admit that something bad happened. And unfortunately, you getting hacked isn't always your fault. Now, there are certain things you need to do to make sure that you're taking care of the risks in your business and things like that. But like sometimes you can do everything right and you can still get hit.
Absolutely. And I know we've shared this before, but the average numbers that the FBI and depending on who you talk to, whether FBI or IBM, that the bad guys are sitting on these networks are still in the 100 to 200 days before people know it.
Yeah, if it's not ransomware usually gets hit pretty quickly because they try to exfiltrate and they try to hit you. But if it's not ransomware, if it's something deeper than that, they're sitting there a long time. The dwell time is a lot longer.
Yep.
What Bob said.
And The other thing is, you've got the cyber insurance, and with the dwell time, these guys are going around looking for things. We've seen cases where the threat actors asked for the exact amount the people had for their insurance,
or in their bank account,
and
yeah, because they saw it.
Yeah, actually, the insurance guy I had lunch with yesterday said that the incident response teams he's been working with have actually been working with negotiating with the bad guys to get the ransoms down lower. So,
well, we're on the precipice too. We talk about ransomware and encryption, things like that, but in the future, there probably won't be any ransom. There might be a ransom, but there won't be any ransomware. It's trending towards they get in your business, they steal your data, they then just basically delete it instead of just encrypting it. They just delete it
and the backups
if they can, and then they're like, "Oh, here's your ransom if you want your data back." And mind you, they still have all of your data. They've exfiltrated it. You look at LA school systems, they had I think 500 gigs exfiltrated. To not notice 500 gigs being taken out of your network, now it depends on the overall time factor. If they're in there for 100 to 200 days, like Bob said, you can siphon that data off very slowly where it probably wouldn't be noticed. But if they're trying to siphon it off very quickly, let's say 5, 6, 7, 8 days, there should be some sort of monitoring that should be done that can notice that. But again, if in the future, they're probably just going to destroy the data. It's not even going to be an encryption thing. They're just going to destroy it. And then you're sitting there with, if your backup's destroyed and your actual data is destroyed, is your business destroyed? Because even if you pay it and you get your data back, they still have a copy of it.
But I deleted the files. It's okay. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of stuff for people to think about. Really, Chris and I are really trying to say this week is have an incident response plan, and don't expect that you're going to have your IT guys come in and put everything back the way it was before, because you do need to figure out how they got in there and how the bad guys got in the first place, and what you need to do going forward. But there's the incident response also triggers other alerts that need to happen for notification and review of all that data that they had access to. So that's why the price is going up, and that's a good topic for another week, because.
I was just saying, recap, get the basics done. This month is all about the basics, right?
Yep.
This month's been all about the basics. Get that stuff done. The next step beyond that is what Bob said. You need an incident response plan. You need some policies in your business to dictate certain things, and you're probably not going to be able to do it alone. So engage somebody. It doesn't have to be us. It could be a local cybersecurity expert. It could be a cybersecurity company. Most IT companies that you're going to deal with probably don't have that expertise. So keep that in mind. You may have to go to a third party to get help. Even if you love your IT person, that's great, but you should probably have to go to a third party to get help for this. So just keep that in mind. Before Sadie chews a hole through your door.
Sadie is just about trying to figure out how to look out the window because she heard something else outside. So.
All right.
Okay, Chris, I will catch up with you next week on the call, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.